Hello everybody, welcome back to Noob Nerds. This is going to be our third video on basing, and it's probably the final video for now on basing. This one is more about bases that you can do with stuff lying around your house. It's going to be relatively easy to do, very fun, and you can get some fantastic bases like this. Yeah, so if you haven't checked out the other two, I'll put a playlist here for those two. They're both 3D printed texture rollers, which is actually pretty neat, neat little experiment. Some of them came out really cool. You should check them out. And yeah, other than that, let's get into it. So we're going to start out the day by making wood floor. So first we're going to just take a one of these popsicle sticks, tongue depressors, and just start, cutting it down, squaring it off, and then cutting it to fit onto whatever size base that you want to make. So I forgot to mention in the beginning of the video, we're going to be using things like popsicle sticks. We'll be using wine corks, grass, rope. We'll be using flocking and a CD. So, also oregano. So, good variety of stuff. All the stuff you have around your house, I'm sure. And once you have it at the appropriate length for your base, just go ahead and just start splitting it down into smaller. Popsicle stick like that was going to be way too big for the scale we're looking for, so we want little tiny pieces. Obviously we're looking for scale for about 6 to 8 inches for the foot of the miniature. So one thing I can tell you about this, make sure you cut more than what you think you're going to need, because you're going to need it. It takes more than what you think it does. It's just kind of deceptive. And obviously once we have these cut down, just go ahead and just glue them down with like super glue or something like that. It works perfect for these. And you're going to alternate lengths where they start on the base as well, just to simulate that of a floorboard. Okay, you can see that we're doing alternate there. And once you have them done, just go ahead and take your hobby knife and score it a little more, just to make the wood grain a little more noticeable. You also can kind of make little tiny drill holes to make it look like those are, nail marks. And with the nature of the material, you're going to have to sand it down to make it a little more round, because it's just going to split off into straight corners. And here we have it where it is, we have the shade on there. So getting into all those good little nooks and crannies and getting all those nail holes and other wood things that we put in there before. Now this, I did wipe off a little bit, did a little bit of a dry brushing, and it looked a little too worn for what I was looking to do. So I went ahead and just added another coat of wash to it. Okay, so I'm a little annoyed here because I had a bunch of a video of me grinding up different objects, a CD, some grass, a wine cork, just things like that, rope, um, just to see if I can get different textures out. But unfortunately, it looks like I have lost all of that footage. So I'll narrate the best I can over the rest of the stuff. Now, one thing is definitely this Liquitex, or not just Liquitex, but any type of matte gel for your miniatures. This is great for mixing just about anything for types of terrain. As you can see here, we're going to start with rope. This is just that coarse rope. I just cut off tiny little portions of it and mix it in with the Liquitex. And then I'll slather it onto the mini base. Doesn't have to look too even or anything, right? Because it's supposed to look natural on the base, and nature really doesn't do even very well. So okay, now here's where we're starting to get into the stuff I really wish I would have had the recording for you. But this is broken up CD that I broke in hand and then put into a blender and chopped it up even more. I'm going to mix it in with this matte medium again, and I'm going to mix it around and put it onto another base. This time I'm going to put it on a bigger base. And honestly, out of all of them, this actually kind of turns into be one of my favorites of the bunch. It's really, really cool. Very cool effect. It's good for, you'll see what I do with this one, like a magma or lava effect, or like an ice effect. I just didn't have the proper blue to do ice on mine, so I went with magma instead. And here's another one I wish I would have got the recording of. This one was the cork, wine cork. This was actually kind of neat to shred down into small little chunks like this. This is a cool basing idea too. It's cheap, especially if you are a wine drinker, or your wife's a wine drinker, or girlfriend, or whatever. You get those things for free if you are, so put use to them. Okay, so for this next one, we're going to use model sprues. In this case, it just happens to be sprues from a Warhammer model kit that I had. And I've just cut it down into small little pieces, looking like bricks. And I'm going to make kind of like a cobblestone out of this. Doesn't have to be too even. Don't have to worry about that too much, because it's supposed to look kind of rough and, like it's, just cobblestone in the middle of some village square. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and get into some of the airbrushing on some of these. And this one, as I said, I'm going to go with a lava effect. So I'm going to start out with a little bit of red in my airbrush and come in here, get in some of the tight little crevices. And don't worry about any overspray. You'll see what we do later. I'm going to come over with a black to look like the hardened, solidified magma later on. Let's just get into some of those crevices with some red. And after the red dries, come back in and with a little bit of yellow, orange. So you do both some yellow and orange at different times, just to give it a little bit of different glowing features, right? Because that's what magma does. Here you come in with a little bit of black and just kind of paint over the parts that are sticking up a little bit. Once that's all covered enough, make sure it is covered really well, right? Because magma's, the solidified magma is black, so.
The U.S. act of aggression was to derail the peace process. Timeless chemical weapons unleashed. Timeless chemical weapons unleashed. Timeless chemical weapons.
And after I let that dry, I'm going to come in with a dry brushing of a gray, just to bring out some of the highlights. Just enough to, give it some edges and stuff like that, so you can see that it's, the higher points of it. And I wasn't too impressed with the airbrushing of the red, so I went back in and just picked out some of the parts that were red. Not all of them, just some of them, and gave them a little bit more of a solid red, just to make it a little more contrast between the two, the airbrushed and the solid painted red. It's variation in color, which is going to make it more dynamic, which is going to make it more realistic looking. Okay, with the magma pit done, let's go ahead and start more on this cobblestone. We're going to take that same gray that we did the dry brushing on the magma and just dry brush it over, the cobblestone, picking out the highlights to try not to get into the grooves too much. We'll come back with more colors later on here. And here we're just going to stipple on some different colors. Stippling on is going to be nice, especially with this brush that I'm using, because it gives it texture. It's nice. It's an older brush that I use for dry brushing, so it has a lot of bristles sticking out and a lot of texture as it is. So stipple with it, and it'll be pretty nice. Come in with some other colors other than gray, some tans, some brick colors, browns, stuff like that. It'll look really good. Okay, the wine cork to me kind of look like, I don't know, a bunch of rocks or part of something from a quarry or something like that. So I went ahead and just started dry brushing it. I did paint matte black, much like the cobblestone, and then went in with like some lighter colors and just started dry brushing. This I'd actually had a liberal amount of paint on there, which is kind of what I wanted. I wanted a little more for this first one, and then I'll go in with some other colors to give it a little more different definition on some of the different high points. Okay, so this one is a chopped up grass, believe it or not, just from out in the green space by my house. I just picked up some dry grass and ground it up in the blender. And I'm just going to go ahead and dry brush this as well with like a greenish color. We're going to make a little bit of like a swampy type thing out of this one. Okay, here we have the oregano next to, which is the darker green, next to the grass, which is the lighter green there. Two different types of swamps, and I'm going to go ahead and glue some wood onto the darker one. This one we're going to take a different type of swamp, but it's still going to be a swampy texture. It's going to be pretty cool. And we'll add in a little froggy that I printed with my 3D printer. And ultimately we'll add a mushroom as well. I don't know if I show that. And then I'm going to take some resin and pour it in to make it look like it is, you know, wet, like it's wetlands or a swamp. Okay, for this base, we're just going to come in with a couple types of flocking. We'll come out with some dark green, some more tannish color, and then some different type of texture green flock, just to give it some variety. And then we'll just kind of, you know, spread the whole glue over the whole thing, and we'll just take pinchfuls of the different types and just place it around where we think it looks good. Trying not to make it too even or anything like that, because once again, nature doesn't really do even too well. The nice thing about these flock bases is that they're relatively easy, and you can do a lot with them, as you'll see later on. You know, come in with some other natural objects, some rocks and plants and stuff like that. They look fantastic. Just they really do look really good. Okay, so for the grass swamp, I want to do something a little bit different. So I took this barbecue skewer and I cut it up into legs for like a boardwalk going across the swamp. And then I started gluing them on. I put 6 of them on, just spaced them out. I made it curve a little bit just to, you know, I didn't want it straight across because that's boring. And with 6 across, I can start putting on some of the cross members. Once again, we're going with the popsicle stick tongue, you know, or tongue depressor, and we're going to do roughly the same thing. We're just going to score it and make it look rough, like raw, you know, like wood and stuff like that. Give it that wood texture, and we can even come in and put in like little nail holes on it to make it look like, you know, someone came in and nailed it down. Then we just come down with some super glue and just start laying them across that platform. Just don't be clumsy like I am. And there we have the finished product. Before we start putting in some of the things like the nail holes, and we put a wash on it to, you know, bring out some of those textures, things like that we put in there. Just be careful that you don't push too hard. Use your edge of your razor knife, or if you have like a hand drill or something like that, one of those small little ones, that'll work pretty well too. And throw on some plants made with paint bristles and make it look more alive. And it should be good. And here we're going to see the different ones. First we have the wood flooring like we did earlier. And just to show you what the figure kind of looks like on top of it. These flock bases I did just didn't turn out too well, so I just didn't really use them too much. But I showed them just for posterity. Okay, so here's the cork one finished. It turned out actually really cool. I like this one, and I definitely would use this again. This is the cut rope one. Once again, maybe in a different type of application, but it turned out kind of neat. Here is the cobblestone. Here's the finished one of the swamp with the water and the frog. I'm not sure what I would do with that. If I did it before, I would actually stick the figure in there and then add in the flocking, or the epoxy. So here is one of the ones we did with the multiple types of flocking. And you can see just adding some natural materials makes it look pretty neat. And here we have the boardwalk over the swamp. Once again, we're using those paint bristle, plants on there to give it kind of a reedy look, make it look like reeds. And here's a little wizard on the boardwalk. He's getting all nicked up. I need to repaint him. And we'll get into some front views of this as well, just so it's not all overhead and looking kind of weird. Different perspective. This one's kind of neat. I really like that piece. Can't go wrong with flocking. Flocking's pretty easy to use. It's nice. And the magma one. Don't know what he would be doing out there in the middle of magma, but I don't know. Feel sorry for him. But maybe he's a, I don't know, fire wizard or something. He's used to this type of stuff. Sorry for my horrible camera work there. But here he is traversing a swamp. Let's see what he looks like on the wood flooring. The wood flooring actually is really cool. That's a nice effect to do. Pretty easy too. And here he is on the cobblestone. I did add some grout to that cobblestone, just so you know, and watered it down. And then on the boardwalk of the swamp. I did go with a kind of a rickety looking boardwalk too. I wanted it to look all disheveled and not really well kept up and stuff like that. I probably should have painted the boards a little darker so like they look like they were moldy and stuff like that. But maybe I'll do that still. And here he is on the grass base. Okay, so that was a look at some bases that you can create yourself. You don't need a 3D printer. You don't even really need a lot of stuff. You have probably most of it in your house. Something you might need to get is that matte gel. That definitely helps, but probably not necessary. I'm sure you could probably use glue instead of it and just paint whatever you need to. So which of these did you like the best? Which of these do you think I should put my little wizard guy on? Because he's going to live on one of these. I'm just not sure which one yet. I like several of them. Um, I really like the lava. I liked the boardwalk. I liked the one with the multiple um, different types of flocking. And the line cork actually was kind of cool too, but so was the wooden floor. Swamp was okay, and I don't know, the other flock ones didn't have enough flock on them. It just didn't look right, so I just kind of threw those away. But anyway, let me know which ones you like. Um, Please, leave a like, a comment, and subscribe to the channel. And I will see you next week.